I'll just do a quick intro. As you know, Gordy, this is Jack Slater in the CEO of Sport Otago. Okay. But we're going to talk about the Queensland Lakes Otago place of draft strategy, which is a refresh of an earlier one, some of which I'm is just going to kick it off, and we'll just do a bit of thinking through this and ask any questions. There's a lot of demands for growing population, sport and recreation, and we've been talking to the communities about that. So we've got a fair idea of what the community would like, and how that and I guess we'll work through.
Thank you very much for allowing us to come and talk to this. This is very much a draft. Just in terms of the timeline that comes up.
Well, it should be very good.
Yeah. All right. So, and just we've been around by Sport Otago is involved in this. We have our Central Otago staff here. From a Sport Otago perspective, space and place is really important to us. And we're funded from Sport New Zealand around the sport space and places role. I take that along with Joe and Ben at a regional level. And it's very much a Sport New Zealand initiative. Good facilities equals activity, so physical activity. So they have invested interest, we have an invested interest, and from a local regional perspective, we're a bit of a neutral perspective there. So we will support into councils, we will support the sports advocate and recreation advocate into council, and we'll work with the funders as well. So we're kind of here to facilitate, and that was our role in this updated strategy. So Sport Otago has got a facilitation role. We work with Central Otago District Council, Queensland Lakes District Council, the funders. So we got CLT, the two councils put money in, we've got Sport New Zealand put some money in, we put some money in, and we went out with the RFP, ended up with Recreation Services Limited, or Leisure Services Limited, and as our consultants. They didn't do the original strategy back in 2020, but the company that did that has merged into RSL. So they had all the old existing data anyway. And since 2020, a lot has happened in this region. So it was very much up for renewal on the basis of just growth in population. So we kicked it off late last year. We've had stakeholder surveys and engagement early on this year. And then we formed a steering group as well, which comprised of 40, Simon Batrick and Alan Wainwright from Queensland Lakes District Council, and myself, and that was 30 from RSL was the chair of that. So essentially that was a small working steering group. We'll get this draft steering group, draft strategy that has gone out to the stakeholders, gone out to councils, both councils, and Simon Batrick and myself presented that. The Environment and Community Committee over QLDC late last month. So they're looking at that. They've got this now, and we're presenting again September 8th for their feedback. So anyway, this is really an opportunity for us to present the draft, and we're after any feedback we can get. So that's on the timeline. Just in terms of the intent, scope of it, it is to replace the 2021. Over on coastal Otago, there was a strategy, exactly the same one done in 2023. So the plan is that once this one is adopted, ideally by the two councils, we will then look at merging the two ones, knowing that they're distinctly different, but having an umbrella over the top. So almost like two chapters of the book of the Otago region. And this is very much a sub-regional plan. It aligns with what's happening across the country as well. So most councils across New Zealand have got a strategy in place that is supported by Sport New Zealand. So it's very much at the national down to regional and sub-regional level. And really it's a framework that is in place that is consistent. And so it's not about making decisions for council, it's about helping guide their decisions. And it's not only councillors and councils that the decisions are for, it's for sports to understand where they fit in the bigger picture, recreation organisations, it's to help funders make decisions as well. So it's really just trying to have some framework and something there that can help guide decision making, and so that gets good decisions made that aren't just a knee jerk to the squeaky wheel or somebody that's got some money or whatever it is that can sometimes overrun good process. And it's intended to work alongside existing policies and strategies that are at each council. So just a couple of things that were the scope was aquatics, indoor spaces and places, so multi-use, court-based and specialised, outdoor, so sports and field and court sports, and then ice sports and other specialised sports. So there were some, like ski fields, were out of scope because they are commercial fields. So the commercial endeavours were effectively disregarded in this. Cool. That's very much it from you.
So we, as James said, we undertook quite a lot of engagement across the district and had some workshops, and there's we talked through there that he's reading about. So we had good engagement. We had some surveys as well, which were answered, and that helped form this, and also had a lot of knowledge from the business, I guess. And what we found out of that is that probably no surprise really is that we wanted increased natural sports field capacity, and in this district as well, and that Queenstown's no different really, growing population and got a sports field and lighting most clubs wanted. I'm not saying councils have to fund all this. Most lights and sports grounds are actually funded by the clubs themselves through half and things. So these lists are not necessarily what council need to fund. It's just looking at the whole overall picture. And then clearly significant expanded indoor multi-sports facility capacity. That's something we're hearing a lot about in this district as well, and you've probably seen Queenstown's grappling with that as well in different spaces. So that's the growth, the joys of growth, I suppose, and how we manage that. And improve facilities, toilets, changing rooms. Most of our facility around sports clubs, as you know, probably built in the 50s, 60s, early 70s, getting into that stage, but I need another refresh. And and there's a lot more women in sport now, and not a lot of those club rooms are not made for women's play sport, additional men's showers and things like that. So there's a lot of work to do on working through that process over in the future. And I guess it's future long-term strategic network planning. So I guess that's what we touched on earlier, doing things not to the squeaky wheel, but looking at something that's strategic and how it's going to happen across the two districts. Because we don't all need hockey turfs, we don't all need great athletic tracks where we're only sort of 40 minutes, sort of circle around 40 minutes for an hour, and better policy frameworks, which we're working on in this district, getting there quite well. And that's probably so we've just had some broad level planning principles as well.
Yeah, these are based on Sport New Zealand framework, slightly tweaked, and was part of the Coastal Otago one back in 2023. And we've just refined them a wee bit. A couple of pull outs there just to talk to was engagement with Manawhena was pretty low as we went through the redo of this strategy. So that's something that we know that we want to make sure they are involved, whether it's through OKR or whatever mechanisms are in place. But I think the Manawhena voice needs to come through in the next stages of any developments that are happening. The other one's just best value for money. And when we talk to the councillors at Queenstown QLDC, there was just a bit of conversation around international level facilities and whether, and basically they were asking why aren't we considering that? And yep, you can consider it, but there is often a huge cost involved with international stands for the one game that you may get a year or one every 2 years, 3 years. Is that even worth it when you could actually have a fit for purpose stadium that actually meets a national level? So there's just conversations like that need to happen. And the other one is just around activation, which is if you do have facilities, is what is the use of those facilities, and what's it look like through a school day, what's it look like through the weekends. I think Wanaka was a good example of their main rec centre, the Wanaka Rec Centre, and pickleball being really popular there. And it's during the day, and it's generally the retired people that are coming in and the travellers. And it's suddenly I've seen a massive increase in the gym space that was generally a dead time. So it's just looking at things around activation. So anyway, those are some of the planning principles, and behind each of those that is around getting good value for money. So
we'll get into the good part shortly. There was, sort of two categories of recommendations. That's operational policy, and then the spaces and places that's actually physical development of something. And the recommendations is 10 sub-regional operational policy ones. Sort of starting with the leadership spread, and I guess that's what I'm trying to say here. What all that means is that we will need to be talking a lot closer together with all the partners, Sport Otago, the two councils, schools, and the sporting communities, so we're all on the same page and we're not getting things left field that we aren't aware of. That's sort of that means, and we need to look at that in a sustainable way as well. The 23 sub-regional planning and development recommendations, and most of these have community organisations involved in being the leaders of that, not the councils or the funders or the Otago. Yes, there's like two sorts in ones across that 10. So the monitoring, the amalgamation of the strategies that James went talked to a bit of time to anyway, more involvement of that, or a lot more involvement required in that space. And then Sport Otago, it's got a few there, leading the education, support the community and volunteers, collaboration, helping with travel support in sub-regional forums. And then the two councils, could lead some cross-boundary policy frameworks. And I think a good one there would be alignment of our investment DCs and land quality standard processes. They're quite different. And if we're trying to get some outcomes in the recreational space, they're more aligned. We'd probably be in both councils in a better position to categorise, which councils is going to have the hub for some football against the hub for athletics or something, if that what happens in the future. And then I guess a lot more important for us with the schools, and particularly Cromwell, Dunstan Heights, and then planning. Because I've experienced schools as well, and I'll go further. So I might just talk to once there. Just on in terms of the next review cycle for the first one, 2030. So we've looked to redo Dorothy Coastal in this one to line up with the long-term planning for 2030. So prior to that, to help inform that next long-term plan. The Otago Region Space the Basic Steering Group. So this is a wider group that is in place. We meet quarterly. It is the coordinates of the 5 TAs across Otago, plus Otago Community Trust, plus Community Trust South, plus Central Lakes Trust. So Matt being from a CLT perspective sits on there. And Sport New Zealand's Glenn McGovern comes in, who's the Space and Places lead, and myself and a couple of other Sport Otago people as well. So that's the wider group. And then just something that came out that Curly from RSL Consultancy talked to was just the lack of understanding from the sports and recreation groups just around the council process of annual planning, long-term planning, and thinking that if they went once, that it's a job done, and that there's just some education piece there, which should be something that Sport Otago, Sports Central will take a lead on. But I think it's just really important to know that the council process is quite hard for people to understand, but it's a really important thing for them to understand when they're trying to advocate. So what we heard from the surveys and feedback was, and we were looking at that, and out just in the QLDC region, I guess, to focus on the primal race course reserve, sub-regional hub, and we've talked about that at the council for a while now, so that's not new for us, and that's in the medium term, running out of space. Also, there's the physical and disability enhancements. I talked a little bit about that earlier. It's across all the old facilities that we have. If they're not going to be replaced, those need to be upgraded for physical accessibility and gender neutral processes as well. We need to monitor the gym sport. See how that goes. That's mainly the modern new stadium. We've heard a lot about space being sort of full with the gyms and not the front places and the other activities unless they take all the gym stuff out. It's just what we hear, so we just it's getting repeated here again. I guess aerobic club room the upgrade across the sub-region. That's in both councils again, a lot of the old facilities need upgrading as well. The football stakeholders, they have I guess, football play across the route, both councils, they're a bit like a swarm of bees. They all go 1 week here and then another week at the next council, they go like that, and that's putting pressure on the limited space we have. So we might need to talk to them about how they can spread it out, but that might not be so good. But
they've already had.
parents who've got kids,
We're already at that point. We're in the second season of having juniors,
yeah,
like up to 8 years play. Like the QLDC wants yourself next between Queenstown and Wanaka, I think, and then CODC we go between Rommel and Alex, and it's a bloody nightmare when you've got a kid playing in the little one,
yeah,
and
that's
then
right.
you're in. It really matches up, so then you've got to go to both and there at the same time. So we hit that 2 seasons ago, 3 seasons ago. I think this might be the third.
That's a growing sport too.
So yeah, that's how capacity those grounds are. And Wanaka they already play across
And that's
the rec centre in Kelly Swat. Anyway, so we can work on it.
for the one too, they're looking at the Downtown Road
Yeah,
land.
but that ship sailed 3 years ago, so.
Yeah,
That's a good example, so, one things that Winston's playing. But no one's on grounds for Winston.
Yeah, like we'll travel to Queenstown and play Alex.
Although there has been more collaboration, but when you've got 2 Alex teams, they just play an Alex
Mm.
yeah.
with no one there, as opposed to driving away to Queenstown.
Some room for that sort of just alignment
There is good.
discussions, yeah. And then again, bowls, we are, I guess, in the district where some of those clubs are sustainable or not, where how they're growing, going to grow. So that's just how they get aligned and what else we can get help them with. Long term, is there a need for an all-weather athletics track in the sub-region somewhere? We can put a chat about that somewhere. You know, people think. Oh, great. Yeah.
That's the parcels government.
Nice junction, it's such value.
Yeah, I'm sure like the councils with the least amount of facilities or the areas produce the most amount of gold medals, don't they?
Yeah.
Isn't there a correlation?
So much.
You can stop to the.
Trying to work tracks out of the government off the concrete. Double off concrete, so I got 2 grand.
And then we've talked about a potential relocation in a couple of years' time, yeah. Council, and then I guess both councils will do separate projects on aquatic network plans. Quite useful for some plan work just at a local level and reduce the risk of under and over investment in aquatics. That's really, as we know, very expensive facilities to have, and that would include some direction for a Ranfurly pool. So we look at where we are, so we look at aquatic spaces and across all the pools and the seasonal pools as well, and what might be replaced when. And then indoor court provision and expansion projects, we've talked about that. The race course, and then in our area, court investigation on new stadium and it's still fit for purpose. And then indoor outdoor covered, maybe the netball courts at Molly Stadiums we talked about having them covered at some point in the future. And then the reserve upgrades, only car and the Toto, and the combined sports club units and parks, but I've been a bit talk about it, the community sport was late.
So when the young girl I've upgraded, that's really happening, it's.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the one we can take off.
Yeah, and what about, Molly Stadium, that's how, why we got to this point of using the reserves to fund that, otherwise we should pull down. Because that's what that whole purpose of was getting it. Yeah, it's not the perfect building, we understand that, but it's still the money that's being spent. It actually done, is to fit it for 30 years.
Yeah,
So, I mean, I guess that's the purpose.
I guess what we're hearing, or through this process, of what the fit for the sports purpose, but or like, okay, it's like gym sport, but nothing else. Actually,
The use of school gym.
yeah, and the school gym's China as well.
So yeah, we got to look at the system, you want people not use facilities, to make them more cost effective, more affordable to use, and more fit for the purpose. But I'll go back to your first fund, and go back to your schools, so it's right at Anderson Park, and we've got to work better with the school systems and services we've got. Now, you look at, there's enough rugby parks down there in St. Chapel, so we put different changing facilities in. You look at them, go back 5 years, I've done another turf in Alexandria, but you've got a multi-purpose turf, now we've got it. Well, we're going to have that first track on the other side, part of the track. But it got boo-hoo because Sports Otago in the early days, well, even it has to be in Cromwell, because Cromwell's grown, Wanga's grown, Queensland grown, it suits fit for purpose. Well, it's not all just sports facility, because we drive an hour from the Toto, and the kid get to go to Cromwell every second night for hockey, whatever it is. So, and if you're in Auckland, you could go for the tour from the North Shore out to wherever they are, or Mount Smart to do facilities. So the distance isn't a big thing. And the biggest issue I've got, a lot of it just seems to be focused on the Queenstown Wanaka end, which makes this place a logical fit. One thing I did have come up, of course, with racecourse is equestrian. There's a massive equestrian requirement. I didn't realise as big as it was from that region for the equestrian facility. I just wonder whether it would be there, because you look at, if you're going to measure a measurable, equestrian, winter sports and those are quite big in the region, and globally, internationally.
Yeah. Yeah, no, question, we worked through all that with the at race course when we did the.
We can have racing there, isn't it?
Well, it's a question versus a lot of things, but
Yeah.
the reality is,
And a lot of question does come from QLDC because there's
Yeah.
no space.
Yeah.
in this place.
Yeah, and we've got Dunstan Park down in Alex as well, which is equestrian as well. All of it. So we've got two dedicated equestrian areas.
And bowls, I think bowls is a very important one, especially for the region I come from. Because the volunteers and the cost of maintaining a bowling club is more of a public health issue. Will well be an issue in a community, a bowling club that traditionally picks up the elderly for their social component, but I've quite often seen them maybe look at a natural astroturf or have go in the council to mow it and put it on the rates. You know, they go, I know the mow a green as well as their own locally, and now you're down to one green, the club's capitulating, where you actually got a growth in their people that actually require that service. So
Yeah, this is about helping facilitate those if they're not sustainable. There's two clubs in the town, why,
that's not happening. That's not happening. Their attitude more than what you got.
that's right.
I think,
Conversation.
some of these conversations are going to be really important as we get to some of those big ticket items. The one that always stands out is the aquatic centres.
Yes.
We're trying to operate in a rates cap environment. They are a big drain on money, and at the moment with every town has one. Do you anticipate that this is going to help feed into that decision-making process?
I think it's to do it in aquatics across the region and see what that looks like. So
District.
yeah, across the district, sorry, to drill them so that you've got some data on where there's an oversupply of pools, where there's an undersupply, and what kind of pools you actually need to have. And if you are going to,
There's a bit of detail in the plan. You've got that, but just a high level about our space and what's available. Still, but it's trying to knock it out in a bit more detail, so it does help the funding, so we're not over or under investing,
Yeah.
and you've got a plan for that. Rather than knee-jerk reaction that there's not enough space, let's do something else. When it might be just how we manage that, I don't know. Just to finish that off is the master plan, which the board community board here asked for Anderson Park, which included what the future of the combined sports club building is going to be. And, you know, we also need to consider the sustainability of maintaining two space at Molyneux Park. That's also quite an expensive, this council had, that's also quite good to have. So it's how we balance that going forward, but there are perhaps other things we need to consider. And then, as we know, that's the big clubs, not work with pickups. So we're looking at labs to identify the storage options on reserves, but we get a lot of people wanting containers. We passed that containers policy a few months ago, just over building facilities. Put some storage in. We can think that.
That's a question on me. And I know we've passed that policy, just in light of Molyneux Stadium. If there is a group of people that are looking, like, saying there's no access to the ability to store gear for them to be able to utilise the space. It's not going to be able to, like if they said, oh, we need a container to consider that. Where would that go? Because if I'm thinking of increasing use into that building, it's not really on a reserve area, is it?
Sure, it is. So, but
It's on a reserve, but it's on the wrong side.
the farmer now did share, so I've got a container and a lead-to building at the back of the stadium building itself, which they have all these stuff in.
Yeah.
For annual again. It's all of a container on the other side of the park. I don't know if we, it's worth building something at that building, state storage for several groups. I think we just need to look at that. If we're doing an upgrade, maybe that's what we add on.
Which will allow
I'll
more
leave
groups to use the space.
Made them with, and proper facility that's for 3 or 4 sports, shares, football, rugby, netball, so, yeah.
Okay.
So the other things we're trying to look at, we can make that building much more, user-friendly, I guess.
So when you come to examples where you were sharing in the drive from Queenstown, you share the cost within that, how's cost sharing going to work? And I guess with the Central H Trust, it's probably that simple because they live in the whole region.
Well, I think,
Because effectively we can end up being the sports grounds for the
Yeah.
growth of the Queenstown Wanaka region, and the cost will fall on the ratepayer here.
particularly the race course, but when that becomes a hub, that'll be a very big sport, equestrian and sports club. And I think that's probably brought back, I mean, we're political decision about how does that going to work with cross-county funding.
And the argument I'll bring out,
Something
something I will bring out is, why don't they put some of those facilities where the people are, and if you make land available, if the council make land available, you have a sports hub facility that we can go to and they go with.
Yeah.
Or and say we go to Lake Hayes or around the rec at the airport, like, why, just because the land's expensive there, doesn't it say a rate that's going to subsidize some of that?
Yeah, I think it's a good conversation to be having.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, we get to the end of it.
I guess that's always going to be for the long regions like us in the Tibet. We're not going to go to Dunedin, or we're going to have to go to Quam or Wanaka at the better housing. So we've got you're always going to be in debate.
It's not really that far, and then you go one.
Yeah, so, and if you look statistically, where most of the Olympians and most of the All Blacks and cricketers have come from, it's the most curlers. Oh, that need to go on. Look them up, put them on your phone.
Okay, this is the last slide, so, we're looking at finalising this strategy over the next month or so, and looking for some feedback. And it would come back to council, may not be not in October, but at some point, for both councils to adopt strategy. So I'm just wondering if this is just a bit of a case of how you want to give us some feedback. We can send out a bit of a survey or a.
Yeah, so the stakeholders that came in that we sent out a survey or invite to stakeholder sessions. So I've been sent the draft copy of this, and along with a job form that they can notice on the things. Actually, we've had about 40 come back, and responses, and predominantly it's, rock climbing out of Queenstown, who need something that we didn't talk
There's nothing
to.
out there they can go with.
Okay, so I don't know why they didn't come to a session to start with, but anyway, that will fit back into that. So we could do something like that. Queenstown Lakes District Council, we are going back to the subcommittee and doing a bit of a workshop with them to get this their feedback, early September. So yeah, I guess there's some options that we can do if you want to give feedback in some way, whatever's going to work for you, we can work on that.
One thing
Well, you can tell Queenstown that Cromwell's got them covered because they're about to open a new climbing gym on the Cromwell College ground, so they can start to
See that.
One thing I was like, doesn't
Movable,
get
though.
love on what we want to have was be a high class sports academy in Central Otago. Because you've got lake for rowing, you've got 150 kilometres flat land, you have cycling, you've got a polytech that's not used, you've got some of the greatest Olympians, world champions, people and coaching facilities. Here, two turfs, but why they came up there and one of the things, you've got it in skiing. Why is there an opportunity to look, if you look at it going big, that you could have like the Institute of Sport, they've got in Australia and what they've got in Palmerston North for cycling, and Cargill, like, is there any thought of being, okay, you could have a rugby hub here, a cricket hub here, you know, and people can fly into Queenstown, the people there come from all around the world, and you go bang, 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 or say cycling would be classic, because you've got right around the lake, you could.
There was certainly some discussion on that, and it did come out through the stakeholder groups. Was just around the high performance environment. So netball was one that came up. I think QLDC often gets approached by rugby league, so the Aussie franchises that want to come over for pre-season and go, can we base ourselves in Queenstown? But it could be wider than that. And Queenstown don't have the space and actually don't have accommodation at that time of the year, probably any time of the year, to cater for a big group. But that's certainly something that as a council,
Take Linda Collins, for example,
Yeah,
you've got to go to
Give us
Sneaker Coach and some
couple of weeks.
juice. And you can have a 2 week or a week course, but it's still holiday with all the 19-year-old girls come in and the training camp, and go to the motorsport park for all the stuff they need to do. And actually have intensity, the same as skiing. You come here, be a part of the community for a while and then go back. Because,
yeah.
It's already happening in certain areas, if you think about rowing, that's one thing that. That's already doing.
Yeah.
Performance academy.
But you need to be aligned with the international sporting organisations. You've got to have them on board. You've got to have facilities. You've got to have some investment. And I think it's a long-term strategic play. If that's what you want from your sports, then that's.
Given how many of them have been in the paper in the last couple of years for nefarious behaviour, I'm not sure that that's who we really want to target.
We'll just put all the bars in one area.
Yeah, and look, this is very much community based, so it is community focused and it isn't targeted at high performance, but that is, I think, a natural path that you go, and it's more around what's your system to filter through to that, and that's the icing on the cake. It does come in an expense though, so and that's where I think you need to work with your national sporting organisations. And
I think we want to focus on our local people first and what we provide, especially in the absence of public transport for getting around between all the different areas.
Yeah.
And then those growth areas and acknowledging that some sports are growing and some sports are not growing. And with our population, and we're going to have to probably have some realistic conversations about those into the future. How much money is the ratepayer putting into something that has 10 or 20 members?
yeah.
When we've got other sports growing at 150% a year, so.
And just, I guess the other thing to highlight within the strategy as well is the regional sports organisations that are predominantly based in Dunedin and have their focus there, and just trying to get them to focus more here. So this is a really good excuse to re-engage with them and to have them in part of these conversations. So you put themselves to the world talking about what's the structure of the competition and how can that change to make sure that it's easier from a local perspective. So those things can.
What happens when the population flips and actually
Well, that's part of the conversation as well.
does, I mean, the population expansion here and migration at some point, and it's probably on the same timeline, which isn't it, that we will be bigger eventually. So at the moment, I think hockey's my sport. So we go to Dunedin for every live performance thing. And there's no other option. You don't play, you don't go to Dunedin. And that's population size. We understand that. We live here, we choose that. But at some point, it's going to be the other way around.
Yeah.
And there's got to be a conversation about when those facilities actually do move from Dunedin to another location to better support where the population is. And that does bring Cromwell or maybe Alex into the picture as a really pivotal point. And I touch at the moment, we're between Otago and Southland. And Mike has played touch Southland at the moment, and we drive to Park every other Sunday for a term and a half.
Well, it's like halfway between the name and Queenstown.
Well, Saturday, what an ornament, would you? You know, and they've said, the Sport Otago are helping us get into touch Otago, because it'd be easier, and they've said, actually, we've got enough people in Wanaka and Cromwell alone, that we're a third of their entire place, and yet we're still going to drive to Otago, or we've been offered the other Oamaru and Dunedin.
Take the hockey, because that was our gift. Why haven't you got a stronger, guess to drag it the other way? As if you had a senior teams, and you got players not playing in Central, you've got to drag the town team.
But there's a Dunedin migration, so, but in my year 7-8 team at the moment, the talent identification has picked up a few kids, and 2/3 of them are going to school in Dunedin, because the perception is, amongst other things, there's a better opportunity, and if you're going to play high performance sport,
Right.
having it on your doorstep, you just can't access that here. So you like Tessa Jock, perfect example, could have gone to school staying in Manitoto, but then we've got people going, like they go to school in Dunedin, even though their roots are.
She shifted from St. Peter's and Oamaru to Dunedin, to school, they beat her to Dunedin for the purpose of the hockey.
But still, she wasn't staying at school locally,
No.
because there's the perception, whether it's real or not, that you need to be in those centres. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy for us at the moment, because we're losing all our kids that would bring the standard up.
Yeah, we've had one discussion with most of the RSOs, the on sports organisations.
Yeah.
They actually, they did get that message that this is the growth area and they need to change some of their old laws.
Because at some point, we'll be the opposite.
Leave it long. Yeah.
Yeah. But if we're looking at that next level of investment to all of those things, and the high performance academies, and they do become centralised, then it makes more sense. But if it's not all in the picture, to consider it's really piecemeal, and then like, oh, we can't move there because of this or because of that. So I think it's a bigger, like it's a 50-year vision, really.
There's a lot of multiple factors involved in that type of decision making for families. It's not necessarily just about sport.
No, but there's a lot of the things in general are deemed to be easily accessible in Dunedin. And sport's huge for Cromwell. We lose a lot of our kids because of sporting opportunities.
Oh, absolutely. We're a rugby especially, other things in town.
Yeah, I guess part of the strategy is partly about that growth and recognising that if this area is growing and will at some point, so we need to be prepared for some point.
But prepared to accept, if it is a question, then we say, yes, we can take that, not, or I don't know where we put it, so it's too hard.
Yeah.
Have you talked to the college here at all about, like, MTI's got that turf going at Dunstan? There's rumbles at Cromwell College at the moment that they've got potential to do the same with the money from the apartments.
We talked to them through the Cromwell race course thing and through this, yes, and to talk to.
Yeah, the board aren't supported yet, but they will be. But being a principal next year, let's have that conversation in March, eh? But that would, like, same with Anderson Park, they're fields side by side. You know, developing an isolation where we can't afford to do that works a whole lot better with those hybrid models.
South End, so we've got, the issue master plan, that whole,
Well,
down really.
but they could take on some of that burden.
That's a nice education. As well about what they're funding and what they're going to do for that expansion, that's still mentioned.
Yeah.
Well, next steps, did we land on everyone giving feedback from, do you want to do it in a workshop, or do you want to send out a little?
I think if you're able to send the job form, then people have got the ability to go through it and have a look and consider it, lots of feedback. That'd be great.
Okay. And then we'll come back to it. Some final updated strategy at some point by before the review. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Positive out of sport is what they say, Gordy.
I know some of our kids are busy enough to do both.
And what about that? Just give them each other.
Yes.
Six one.
And then tomorrow morning, we are going to the vet for a workshop that we are in Alex. So don't come to the wrong day. Thanks, morning.
I've got a prison after